Hot Mike with Dom Izzo.
Really? Really, Dom?
No. I like what Dom's doing.
Okay.
Dom Izzo.
Jeez, come on, Dom. What do you think I am, a magician?
Yeah, I'm fired up, Dom. What else could I say?
Absolutely. It was great to get on the field, and then Dom came up to me, and I'm trying to walk away from me. I just wanted to enjoy myself out there.
Hot Mike.
Great job.
There's got to be some kind of intelligent question about something. Is
Hot Mike. Hot Mike. On the networks of WDAY.
You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
Here's Dom Izzo. Dom Izzo.
Good Wednesday morning. This is the Hump Day edition of Hot Mike on WDAY Extra and InForum.com. We can also label it the initial mock draft edition of Hot Mike. I'm staring at my computer. ESPN's shouting at me on their main screen of their first mock draft. So welcome to draft season officially, folks. It only took us to January 25th here to reach it for 2023, which will be infinitely interesting for numerous reasons, depending on what your favorite football team is. For mine, it's actually not in the top 10 of picks, so that'll make it interesting. So we'll dive into that here in just a little bit. Lots to get to today. We got a busy show. Some fun guests coming up. We're going to run the gamut on some things here today as we are closing in on NFL Championship weekend with the two title games in Philadelphia and in Kansas City. If you missed our conversation yesterday with Cincinnati Bengals starting left guard Cordell Volson, pride of Balfour, North Dakota, former Bison All-American, we've podcasted that. It's at InForum.com. Great stuff there. Literally outside of the training facility in Cincinnati, getting ready for the AFC title game. So if you missed that, you can check that out. It's on our podcast and our website at InForum.com. We'll visit with David Richman coming up later in our show. Bison Men with a biggie coming up Friday night. You'll see it on WDAY, statewide TV on ABC for the game with UND. Bison Men have lost a couple in a row here, all at home. Chance now to start the second half of league play with a victory at home before it gets infinitely harder, because next week it's the Jackrabbits and South Dakota on the road. And as Mike McFeely and I were chatting about yesterday, they have those two games. They still have to go to Kansas City and Tulsa. So the road will be difficult to hoe here for the Bison Men. We'll get into that coming up at 10 o'clock. And as I mentioned yesterday, big day for you baseball rubes here in town. The Twins Winter Caravan is back after a 3-year absence. It's just crazy. The last time that the Twins came to town, January of 2020. Just think about that, of where things were in January of 2020, that everything was about to change in about a month's time, that COVID then hit, and nothing's been the same really since. The Caravan didn't happen the last 2 years, and now it's back. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of Twins fans excited to see a couple of Twins. Jose Miranda and Nick Gordon are here in town tonight, coupled with the radio guys, Dan Gladden, Twins all-time great, now Twins Hall of Famer, as he was inducted in this past summer. We'll get into that coming up before our show leaves here today. Let's start with some news that just broke here before we head on the air. The Associated Press announced its 5 finalists for MVP of the National Football League. No surprise that Patrick Mahomes is there, that Joe Burrow is there, that Jalen Hurts is there, that Josh Allen is there. But there is one non-quarterback there. He has no chance to win, but it's just nice to have a non-quarterback there. And that is Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson is one of the 5 finalists for MVP of the National Football League. He led the NFL with 128 receptions, 1,809 receiving yards. He was one of 2 unanimous choices for AP All-Pro along with Travis Kelce. He's also up for Offensive Player of the Year along with Hurts and Mahomes. If he's not winning MVP, I don't know how he's winning Offensive Player of the Year. Plus, it just gives us a reason to show this highlight reel, including that catch at Buffalo, which is the greatest thing I've ever seen in a professional football game. He's been a dominant force in his 3 years in the NFL, and this is a well-earned recognition for what he did. He finished with 8 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, so 9 total. Obviously, what happened in the playoff game will be long discussed, and whatever the Vikings do this offseason, whether it's restructuring defensively and they have to hire a defensive coordinator, paying him should also be a high priority. I know that they've still got a little bit of time left here. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said last week in their season-ending press conference that they've already started talks with his representation, which is great. But the pay the man, that it stops there. He's the guy. Doesn't matter who's throwing the ball to him, which they've got to figure out, which we'll get to in our next segment. But pay him whatever he so desires because he's worth it. He's just an absolute dominant force on the field. So he is one of the finalists again for MVP, joined, as I mentioned, by Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow. No surprise, and Jalen Hurts. Who is going to win it? If Jalen Hurts didn't get hurt, sorry for the pun there, he's the guy in my mind. He wins the MVP. Mahomes' number are just outrageous again, so I don't know if that's the easy pick. Not Josh Allen. I think he turned the ball over too much, and I know this is a regular season award. I'd either go Mahomes or Burrow if I'm going MVP. Burrow is literally, you take Joe Burrow off the Cincinnati Bengals, how many games do they win? You take Patrick Mahomes off the Kansas City Chiefs, how many games? I mean, Kansas City still got probably more guys around, though the Bengals defense has been really good, though, too. That's maybe a wash there. If you take Hurts off the Eagles, how many games do they win? 7? 6? 7? You could say that. Take Jefferson away from the Vikings. How many games do they end up winning this season? They won 13. They win half of that, probably. And that's the fact they had a horrendous defense. That's what makes that, to me, that's how you define that. If you take said person off the roster, how many games does that team win? That's, to me, what most valuable is. I know it's different for person to person on that, but to me, that's how you gauge that. Also, yesterday, we talked about it before we left the air as we visited with Seth Stowes about it. Yesterday was the big day for Major League Baseball as the Baseball Hall of Fame voting results were announced. Typically, this is a day where, for baseball rubes like myself, you kind of hold your breath like, all right, is anybody going to get in? Because you knew the candidates out there. And they made the announcement in Cooperstown last night that one guy is getting in. Scott Rowland from the Philadelphia Phillies and the St. Louis Cardinals is getting in. And just, by the way, quick word, why does this video look like it's from 1895? This video is not that old. It's from the early 2000s. It's amazing how bad some video looks. Rowland, though, a 7-time All-Star, an 8-time Gold Glove third baseman, got 76.3% of the vote, which is just over the minimum. You need 75% to get in, and he will join Fred McGriff, who was voted in December of the quote-unquote the Veterans Committee of making it into the Major League Baseball or the Baseball Hall of Fame. It was a 6 year of eligibility. You get 10 years on there to get in. He played with the Phillies, the Cardinals. I have no recollection of him playing with the Blue Jays and the Reds. His 8 Gold Gloves are 4th most for a third baseman. He was the 97 Rookie of the Year, and he was a member of that freaking Cardinals team. You can see it here in 2006 that won the World Series. They beat the Mets in Game 7 at Shea Stadium. Still shaking my head about that one. The Mets, Rowland was huge in that game. That was he was great in that whole series. And ended up winning a world championship there. So I'm interested because the Hall decides. The player doesn't. The Hall decides what cap they wear going in. He came up with the Phillies, but he was a dude with the Cardinals. I'd imagine he's going to be another Cardinal Hall of Famer. Todd Helton just missed out on making it. He got 72.2% of the vote, which that's his 5th year. I would imagine he's probably going to get in next year for enshrinement into Cooperstown. And then it gets real interesting. I was reading this morning before I came into work, because next year the guy's up on the ballot. Adrian Beltre is up next season. He's a slam dunk to make it. And now these are guys that you have seen play. And I'm talking to our younger listening and viewing audience that will be up for induction. Chase Utley is on that list. My good buddy Chris Coase, former teammate, I imagine he has a strong feeling there. And also, Joe Mauer will be up for induction next year. And I put that out there, and maybe we'll have more time, maybe tomorrow or Friday, to discuss this, because in the heat of it, where we have time, of his candidacy for the Baseball Hall of Fame, which he is the only catcher ever to win an MVP and a batting championship. He won 3 batting titles. I just wonder, his injury history there certainly affected that, because if he stays a catcher, it's a slam dunk. It might still be a slam dunk that he's a Hall of Famer, but we'll get into that maybe later in the week. But he comes up for induction next year, which is crazy that it's already been that long that he's been, because you got to be out, I believe, 6 years to get your name on the ballot. But Scott Rowland will go in with Fred McGriff coming up this July. Real quick before we set up our show, last night featured on our What to Watch, Minnesota Wild wrapping up their 4-game East Coast road trip. They had only won 1 game so far. They was beating the Capitals. They had lost to the Hurricanes, lost to the Panthers. Last night, a matchup with the 3-time reigning Eastern Conference champion Tampa Bay Lightning. They got off to a great start in the game. That's a fabulous move to score the game's opening goal to give the Wild a 1-zip lead on the road. This game was dominated by the goaltenders last night. Tampa answers after that goal by Eriksson Ek. That's Corey Perry scoring through a screen to tie the game at 1. I watched this live. Kaprizov, literally, I don't know, the puck didn't even hit the ice before he tied the game or gave the Wild a 2-1 lead. The Lightning answer back here on a Corey Perry wrister on the power play and tie the game up at 2. I'm not. Marc-Andre Fleury really had no chance there to make a save. That was a great save. Fleury had 35 of these. That is fantastic. At his age, still getting across pipe to pipe to make the save there. The Lightning break through on a rebound chance down low. Stamkos scores here off a Wild player, his 24th of the season, to make it a 3-2 game. And then Andrei Vasilevsky, who's all of 6-7 in net for the Lightning. This is why they've won back-to-back cups and made it to the cup final last year. Makes a couple of dynamite saves. They get the empty netter. The Lightning win it 4-2. That's 3 straight losses now for Minnesota. And don't look now, Colorado is catching fire. Up-to-date standings in the Central Division right now, where Dallas leads, the Jets right behind them, and now Colorado has passed Minnesota. And for those that forget, and I don't blame you because the NHL playoff deal is the hardest thing to figure out, the top 3 in each division make it. And then after that, it's the top 2 from there on in. And you'll see right now the Minnesota Wild are not in the postseason right now. That's a nifty graphic there. We're going to have to use that as we go forward. But again, top 3 in your division make it. And then after that, you got to be in the top 2 wildcard spots. And obviously the Wild are not in that. And it's Dean Evison, the head coach of the Wild, was not thrilled about how things played out last night. They're back home for the Flyers coming up tomorrow night. Let's set up our show on a busy Wednesday morning. Drew Trafton will be back with us after a week off. Be good to visit with Drew and get caught up on some NFL stuff. maybe even test his soccer mind, is the U.S. men's national team plays tonight, their first game on HBO Max, the new TV home for U.S. soccer. That's coming up at 9:20. 9:35, friend of the show, our good buddy Jon Schaeffer, now I could say former TV sports dude, but he is the king of Iowa TV sports, and he covered almost every Brock Purdy game at Iowa State. We got to visit with him about the crazy connection with Brock Purdy and NDSU. There is a line there, folks. We'll discuss that coming up at 9:35. At 10 o'clock, David Richman will join us in his usual Wednesday time slot. We mentioned Bison Men and UND coming up on Friday night on WDAY. We'll preview that. And at 10:35, we'll welcome back Minnesota Twins president Dave St. Peter to the show. As we mentioned, the Twins Winter Caravan is here in town tonight. Also, there was a rather large football announcement, and I said football, in Brookings, South Dakota, because there is another football game returning to Target Field this year. South Dakota State will play the Drake Bulldogs at Target Field in September. We'll talk to Dave about how that all came about and expectations for that and what they learned from the last football game, which involved North Dakota State when the Bison played Butler in, it was the last day of August 2019. So how about this, folks? I'll just throw this out there for you Gopher fans out there that continue to give me a hard time. North Dakota State and South Dakota State will both play in the city of Minneapolis this fall. Neither one against the University of Minnesota. I wonder why that's the case. And with that, we'll start our show. We'll take a break. We're off and rolling here on this Hump Day edition of Hot Mike. We're back after this on WDAY Extra at InForum.com.
The biggest Seahawks, Sounders, and Mariners fan in the FM area. It's time for Views with Drew.
Well, he's back. Welcome back from vacation,
Do I look
man.
like I have
tan
yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
A nice glow of vitamin D.
Where did you go?
We went to Florida,
Nice.
Southwest Florida.
Okay.
So I was in Fort Myers. Thank you. Yep, thank you very much. Yep, traveled out of the tri-state area. Big move for the Trafton clan. We went to
Nothing is easy with kids, man. Young kids either.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Flying. This was my son's first plane trip, and he was not as good as his sister was when it came to on.
So your son is what
15 months
year?
old,
Okay,
yeah.
year plus. Okay.
We had
How
some
old was
struggles.
Josie when she first flew?
Oh, probably around that same age.
So
you know, probably
we were
like
old.
right
Jackman
before.
Jackman just did it this past summer at 3. So
Yeah, it's a.
and I was nervous as
Yeah.
hell, honestly, about it. But he was really good.
We had like snacks, just like
Yep.
I mean, it was like
Yep.
a backpack, like a carry-on full of snacks that we just kept like stuffing his mouth with to keep him quiet. Like I felt like we were force feeding him at some point, but he did okay. He did struggle a little bit more. We were lucky with Josie, our daughter. Like she just like, I remember she climbed into my lap and just fell asleep.
Yeah.
And it was just like done. You know, like she was out gate to gate, like each flight, and it was like perfect. And then, Luke fought it a little bit more. Poor guy.
Well, it's great to have you back. I
Thanks.
hope you had a great vacation.
Yeah, we did.
I'm going to hit you with a couple things right off the top
Let's
here.
do it.
So I don't know if you've checked ESPN.com today, but
I have not.
we've officially entered mock draft season.
All right.
Mel Kiper's one is
I've
out.
been in mock draft season since September.
But here's the thing. Your team was good.
Yeah.
Made the postseason, which is a
Surprise.
bonus. And you've got Denver's pick just sitting there. Way to go, Broncos, on that deal. The 5th overall pick.
Yeah.
Okay. Mel Kiper, our guy,
Yes.
big fan of our show,
Big
has the
supporter.
Seahawks taking Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky.
Interesting.
With the 5th overall
Okay.
pick. He says the 3rd quarterback in the top 5 picks because he's got Bryce Young going to the Colts at
Okay.
4. And he got C.J. Stroud from Ohio State going to the Texans at 2. So he's got Stroud at 2 to Houston,
Interesting.
Young at 4 to the Colts. Levis is going to be polarizing for the next few months. Turn on his
Mm-hmm.
tape, and you're going to see some poor interceptions and questionable decisions. He actually had one against Youngstown State. But you're also going to see rockets that should have been caught and tight window throws that no other passer in this class can make. There will be a general manager in the top 10 who see Levis's positives over the negatives. He's also ahead of the curve and learning a pro-style offense because that's what he played in for the Wildcats.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I wouldn't go that route at 5 if I were the Seahawks, just because I feel like they've really made it clear that they want to bring Geno Smith back.
Yep, which I think is smart.
Yeah. And
but there's no reason you couldn't have Levis be your backup.
Yeah, and you definitely want to take a look in the direction of the future for sure. I see them going more defense with that pick.
See, Mel's got at 20, he's got them taking Byron Young, the defensive end linebacker from Tennessee.
Yeah.
So
I guess if they're going to take a quarterback early, my thought is right now that they would maybe try to move back in the first round. Like maybe like a Carolina would be, willing to move up and accrue some more draft capital, because unless they fall in love. If they fall in love with Will Levis, great. I think heading into this season, I thought, I watched a lot of his Kentucky stuff, and I liked him. But if they're not like in love with a quarterback, I just can't see them spending that draft capital at that spot, because they need so much help on the defensive line. Pete Carroll, after they lost to San Francisco, was asked point blank, what's the difference between you and San Francisco? And he said the front seven. And that's true, I think, in a lot of regards. And I think that's true across the league. A lot of the separations and, in the trenches there. And I think that's where they're going to spend the pick if they spend it.
Well, I want to stay in the NFC West here, because the story that has come out, and it's gained a bit more steam now, because it came out before the 49ers win over Dallas. Michael Silver, longtime NFL columnist, worked for the NFL Network, writes for the San Francisco Chronicle. Headline goes, debate it if you must, but the 49ers quarterback in 2023 is Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And Silver, according to his sources in the NFL, has said that the best, if the 49ers decide to do that and move on from Trey Lance, that the best the 49ers could get back is a third-round pick. I will remind everybody that the 49ers gave up 3 number ones, including this year's number 1, and a third-round pick to the Dolphins to move up to the 3rd overall pick for the 2021 NFL Draft to take the former Bison quarterback. If that is accurate at all, which I'm not here to debate his sources, but I would be surprised if the 49ers are willing to pull the plug already, then there is I think a laundry list of teams, including my favorite team, that should say, here you go. If it's a third and a second, or a third and a third, here you go.
Yeah.
We'll take him.
Yeah.
I'm stunned at this, honestly.
Yeah. So last
Maybe
night,
I shouldn't be, because Purdy isn't lost. And if they win the game Sunday and are going to the Super Bowl,
with
he's
an
got to be
undefeated
your
quarterback.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. And there's been all that talk about Jimmy G could be ready for the Super Bowl, but
Jimmy
it's like
G's done.
you're not gonna throw him in that game.
No.
And they washed their hands of him before this season even started.
If you go to Philadelphia and win with Brock Purdy, he's the guy.
Well, and he's been so impressive. He really has. Yep. And with San Francisco, you're in an interesting spot, because you've got 2 guys on rookie contracts.
Yes.
Where it's like, well, so there's really not. I wouldn't see a lot of pressure in them having to move on from Trey Lance.
Right.
Like, so what? We have an insurance policy in our back pocket, which that franchise has shown, with the Jimmy G situations, that they're not afraid to do. They're not afraid to have several quarterbacks on their roster who could be the starter.
They also had Joe Montana and Steve Young,
right.
by the way, for a while.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I would be surprised too if that's true. Obviously, those things don't leak out unless they.
That's a great point. That's a great
franchise
point.
wants them to leak out, or somebody wants them to leak out. Whether that's
Brock
Trey
Purdy
Lance's
is getting
camp.
$890,000. By the way, that's what is. That's nothing right now.
Trey Lance is relatively cheap, and his contract. I think he's
right.
I can't remember.
So
it's like
right
$8
now,
million a year?
this is year 3 of his rookie deal. He's making $3 million total against the cap. Is $9.3 million. What I'm told is it's a $10 million cap hit if they want to move on from him.
And with quarterbacks,
that's nothing. We saw the Eagles ate $30 million on Carson Wentz and didn't even blink an eye.
Yeah,
how'd that work out? Seemed like it worked out all right for them.
They read the tea leaves right there. So my big question is: do the Niners want this out there, or does Trey Lance want this out there? But
that's a good question.
The fact that there's a price attached to it, or an equivalency of draft capital would make me think that that's the organization coming out.
See, you know what? That's a good question. I remember when we did this dance with Carson when leaving Philly, I think that was Wentz's representation putting out
this
that
this
is probably would want to part ways with how things are going in Philadelphia here.
And I could see that from Lance's perspective.
John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan don't mess around here. You know, they know exactly what they're doing. They have built, obviously, another Super Bowl-worthy roster. They're in the title game for the third time in 4 years. I've watched a handful of 49er games with Purdy. He is unflappable. He really is. And
he's very cool and calm and collected.
Even if they were to lose the game on Sunday, I still think he's maybe the guy. Trey hasn't done enough. Obviously, he's been hurt. But I still think the 49ers, and maybe you agree with this, were probably wishy-washy on him anyway. That they brought Garoppolo back this year.
Yeah.
Still because I don't know if they were still sold on where Trey was development-wise.
Yeah, and Trey, I think, has been a kind of a victim of his own success in some ways because he had that perfect season with the Bison, and then he, because of COVID.
He plays one game.
And then he sits. Yeah. He's... Yep. We don't know what he is.
No.
And I mean, even with his early season success this year, what would have turned into? We're not sure. And so he's largely a question mark.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you want to take a third round, stab at a quarterback that could potentially be huge, but he does have an injury history now too.
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult. I can see where San Francisco is coming from, and I think the smart move is if you're going to put money behind one quarterback on your roster at this point. To me, Purdy seems like the right choice.
There'd be 10 teams lining up for Trey Lance.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, his skill set, everything that he's shown, he's shown he can play in the NFL. There are a lot of quarterback needy teams out there.
It's fascinating.
Yeah,
to me.
I mean, if you're the Colts, to me,
if you're the Minnesota Vikings, if you want a
third rounder,
succession plan for Kirk Cousins, that's your guy.
Yeah,
and it's not just because he's from Minnesota. If you want to figure out, hey, we actually have a young quarterback and we don't have to give up a whole lot for him. Yeah. I would do that in a heartbeat if I'm the Vikings.
I mean, really, it's San Francisco's appetite of where do we want him to go, is the question. Because I think you're right. I think there would be so many teams lined up that they could really dictate the future on that one.
It's really interesting with a young man and he's still young, that has still not played a lot of football. In the last 4 years.
And he's so young.
He's played 7 games, I think, since 2020. Since the Bison left Frisco in January of 2020, when you and I were there, when they beat James Madison, he's played, I think, 7 or 8 games.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. That's why I really think
because he played the one game against Central Arkansas. He started twice his rookie year when Garoppolo was hurt. He came in a couple other times, a Sunday night game against Green Bay and against the Colts. And then the 2 games this year. Yeah. That's 7 or 8 games in a 3-year span. So even if you're San Francisco, maybe you don't have enough.
You don't have a sample size
intel there.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, we've heard the stories
Purdy's
from training
got more
camp.
of a sample size than Trey Lance does.
Absolutely, he does at this point. And he doesn't have the injury history.
And that's why and that's probably why you go with him.
Yeah.
Maybe I answer my own question there. Maybe that's why you do it.
I mean, and it's a great problem to have if you're San Francisco, right? I mean, they've been in that boat for years now, where they've just got really good
They're
problems.
doing this again.
But it's
Oh man, who's winning this weekend? Who you got for the games?
I like Cincinnati just because we don't know what Patrick Mahomes is going to be, and Cincinnati's they're such a balanced team. They're and they just hit their stride at the right spot. I don't think Zach Taylor's getting enough credit for what's been happening with that
Their
team.
defense is good.
So good.
Yeah.
And then the NFC title game, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say just because it's a home game for Philadelphia and that's such a hard place to play.
So good at home.
And I like what that Eagles offense can do too, a little bit more than San Francisco, but San Francisco is more dynamic. So it's tough. I mean, I want to see Philadelphia win because I don't want San Francisco, just from an NFC West perspective, I just don't want them to win. But I guess I'll go Philly,
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, if that ends up being the case, by the way, then the NFC West will be represented in the Super Bowl for what is that? 3 of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Welcome to what life was like in the AFC East
Yeah.
forever.
Something,
the Patriots
something
were there
Patriots,
every
something,
single
something
year, right?
Patriots, Tom Brady. Yeah.
Great to have you back, man. Thanks for coming by.
having
Drew Trafton giving us his time each and every Wednesday. We'll take a break. Speaking of Brock Purdy, our next guest covered him exclusively in college. We'll visit with our buddy Jon Schaeffer and the tie between Purdy and NDSU. It's wild. We'll do that when Hot Mike returns right after this. Welcome back, everybody. We roll on here on a busy hump day edition of Hot Mike, WDAY Extra, InForum.com. Bison men's basketball head coach David Richman coming up at 10. Twins president Dave St. Peter at 10:35 about the winter caravan hitting town here tonight and college football returning to Target Field this fall. We'll get into that coming up later on in our show. We were just visiting on the 49ers quarterback dilemma going forward, whether it be Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, which is a dynamite decision to have. There is such a unique and wild connection between Brock Purdy and North Dakota State because if fans will remember, in 2018, Zeb Nolan was the quarterback at Iowa State. Nolan lost the job to a freshman named Brock Purdy. So Zeb Nolan transfers to North Dakota State for the 2019 season to battle with a freshman named Trey Lance, which Trey Lance ends up winning said job. Zeb goes on, of course, to still quarterback at South Carolina and win a game down in the SEC as a grad assistant. One of the best stories ever. Then, obviously, Trey Lance goes on, gets drafted by the San Francisco 49ers, who also draft Brock Purdy. And then Trey Lance gets hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. And Brock Purdy is replacing Trey Lance as the starting quarterback in San Francisco. The football interconnection is always fascinating to me. And there's one guy we want to talk to who knows all about Brock Purdy and the state of Iowa. We dubbed him Iowa TV sports legend. I hope he's okay with that since he's out of the business now. We welcome back our old friend Jon Schaeffer to the show. It's great to see you, man. How you been?
Good, Dom. I mean, sports legend, 8 years, I guess, makes me legendary.
Yes!
We'll take it. What's that make you then?
Old?
And a legend of North Dakota already. You don't even have to step away from it to be a legend.
Well, first off, you're on the other side, so you got out and you got normal hours, man. I'm jealous of that in its own right, but it's great to see you, and I know you listen to that, you live that as well. We chatted when Zeb Nolan was coming up here, and I remember asking you about, well, who's Iowa State's guy, and now everybody is asking, who's San Francisco's guy? You saw it up close. You saw this whole thing happen with Brock Purdy.
Yeah, it's crazy to look back on 2018 because it was such a ride. They had Kyle Kempt, who, again, was a third-string guy, came in the year prior and beat Oklahoma. He was supposed to be the guy. Gets hurt, has some injuries after week 1 or week 2 against Iowa. Zeb Nolan comes in, just can't move that offense, and they lose to TCU. Oklahoma State, it was a year where I was actually traveling for every Iowa State game. So we were down at Oklahoma State. Zeb Nolan plays 2 drives. Offense goes stagnant again. So who comes in but Brock Purdy? And we're like, who is this? Like, nobody really knows who this kid is. And he just lights Oklahoma State up. They go into Boone Pickens Stadium, get a huge win. This kid plays with this moxie. He's high-stepping into the end zone, pump-faking defenders out of their shoes. And all of a sudden, we have a story on our hands, and we can't talk to a freshman. Iowa State did not allow us to interview freshmen. And so we can't talk to the guy. So we're trying to contact his parents, all that kind of stuff. Rest is kind of history from there. He becomes a 4 or 5 year starter for Iowa State, leads him to a Fiesta Bowl victory a few years later. Senior year didn't go as planned, but played with weapons. I know you're a huge Breece Hall guy, being the Jets guy you are. And so it's been a wild ride. And then Mr. Irrelevant gets drafted somehow to 49ers. And next thing you know, like you said, you kind of played it out there.
You saw this happen up close. To see the kind of success, I know everybody has been surprised at what he's done at the NFL. You saw him play in college. Is it still the same guy that you saw up close, that what he's done over the last 2 months with the Niners?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's not a surprise that when Brock Purdy got in, he was successful. And I think it catches the rest of the world off kilt because of, okay, an Iowa State quarterback. Like, come on, who was the last Iowa State quarterback that did anything? And that was like Sage Rosenfels and Seneca Wallace.
I was going to say
right?
Seneca Wallace came to mind. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Sage Rosenfels was this prolific backup quarterback through all those years, but that's all he really was. And so Brock Purdy stepping in, and obviously you don't wish any injuries on Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo, and as a Cowboys fan, it killed me last week to sit there and watch this, but you can't help but root for Brock. Just the utmost nicest kid, super built into his faith and knows who he is first and foremost. And I think that's why he's able to be so successful on the field. It's a Matt Campbell mantra. You don't judge your success by wins and losses. And I think Brock Purdy embodies that to such a high level of extent.
What has made him so successful, John? What made him so successful in college, and how has that translated to the NFL?
I just think it's prep. I mean, he was always preparing like he was going to be the starter. He's always envisioned it. And then from there, he's not afraid to be mobile. And I think San Francisco has been able to exploit that a little bit. We've seen him roll out of the pocket left quite a bit, which – that's his go-to escape route. And at times it plagued him in college. But I think he's that guy that's going to keep working until he proves himself right. And that's kind of an infectious attitude to have. And obviously gain the respect of that Niners locker room, the way he prepared as the third string guy.
He's an Arizona kid. How highly recruited was he? And was it a big deal when he ended up coming to Iowa State?
It was kind of like, I remember when he committed, and it was like, okay, they're getting another quarterback, but I haven't heard a lot about him. And that was because he dealt with injuries through his junior year. And so his recruitment was very much delayed. Iowa State was on him pretty early considering that, but you see the stories of he went to Bama, toured Bama, and met Nick Saban, and Nick Saban's like, you're not accurate. And Brock Purdy's like, that's the only thing I am right now is accurate. Like, his arm strength was down because he had lost all this weight, lost all this strength. And so, I mean, and then you read the SI article after he starts for game 2 of 49ers, and they're like, he's built like a fullback. And I'm like, what fullback is built like Brock Purdy? Yes, he has large thighs, but other than that, he's not built like a fullback. He is very much the kind of a Josh Allen shorter version, I'd say.
I love the athletic piece. I don't know if you saw it yesterday that Bruce Feldman got, because he got the feedback from the actual the scouting report that lived up to him. And there was 2 words on it that said no interest. I mean, we're not to Tom Brady level yet, but if he wins this game Sunday, we're going to have that conversation for 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And what's even crazier about it, and look, Tom Brady's the GOAT. He is certainly the best to do it. Mahomes is getting into that era right now, I'd say, of being the best of his generation. Brock Purdy is a great game manager. He's an intelligent kid. He's got everything between his ears that he needs to be a successful quarterback. He also has the most dynamic set of weapons a quarterback could ask for in the NFL. And he's got a freaking genius running it all for him. Yep. And not saying Brock Purdy Jimmy G struggled like at times with this offense. Brock Purdy brings an element, but he's not perfect. He knows it, but he's willing to take what he's given, and I think what kind of plagued him at Iowa State were some of those boneheaded or like questionable decision-making plays. The TCU game comes to mind. I don't know if you remember that, where he's being sacked and he throws it 20 yards across the field backwards for a lateral and it's scooped and scored, or the batted pass against Clemson in the bowl game where it's taken back for a touchdown. Like, it's that kind of stuff that in college plagued him. He's not being asked to do more than he needs to in San Francisco, and I think that's the big difference.
And the also part of that, Trey Lance struggled running the offense too. I mean, it's another thing, and that's a whole other dynamic we were just talking about, that if they win this game, I don't know how you don't have Brock Purdy be your guy in 2023, which is a whole other deal on that. How big a deal is this in Iowa right now? Around Ames, how big a deal is this?
My goodness. It's huge. I mean, my Twitter feed is constantly blowing up with Brock Purdy. Iowa State fans are buying out Brock Purdy San Francisco jerseys. I have a buddy who at work who literally sits a cubicle across from me. He is a Rams fan, and he has a Brock Purdy San Francisco 49ers jersey. That is what it's doing to people here. It makes I mean, I caught myself rooting for him again against the Cowboys last week. Like, it was a win-win for me because it's such a good story. He was such a good person to be around when you were interviewing him in media days and throughout the season. He was always respectful. He was always the first guy to take onus when things weren't going right.
Is there a chance if they win this game, you will unretire and come back and do like 28 live shots for the Super Bowl like you did a few years ago up here?
Where is it this year? Arizona.
Arizona,
right?
Yeah.
Arizona sounds way better than Minneapolis was back a few years ago. So yeah, I'll come out of retirement. Dom, if you need live shots, just let's get in touch with management at DAY. We'll make the trip.
By the way, John Wheeler as an Iowa State alum, always texts me here. Big win for Iowa State hoops last night over K-State. I mean, things are rolling right now in the Big 12 alone. Kansas, Baylor, TCU, K-State, Iowa State. Holy cow.
Yeah, the Big 12 is a gauntlet, and the problem is they beat each other so much up during the regular season that they get to tournament time, and they're just gassed. So hopefully that doesn't happen this year, but man, is it fun to watch.
By the way, before I let you go, your buddy Jared Piepenberg wanted me to tell you he said hello. He's right around our, not too far from our studios here, so we got a little KXMB reunion going on this morning, so I just wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, say hi to Jared for me. Miss that guy.
Great to see you, man. Glad things are doing well. Thanks for giving us the 401 on Brock Purdy, all right?
All righty. And for any questions out there, just keep rooting for the guy. He's going to be successful, Niners fans. Don't sweat it.
Thanks to see you, bud. Thanks for the time. There he goes. Jon Schaeffer, former WI sports director in Des Moines, KXMB guy out in Bismarck. We call him Iowa TV sports legend. He's given us a few minutes here this morning on our show with he saw all of Brock Purdy firsthand. Saw him play at Iowa State, and now here he is, a win away from going to the Super Bowl. And boy, adding some real consternation for Bison fans up here if the 49ers end up winning what they're going to do with Trey Lance. Good stuff there. We'll take a break. Got a couple other things we'll get to. Wrap up hour one. Dave Richman coming up. Bison men's basketball coach when we start hour two of the big show. We'll do that when we roll on right after this. Wrapping up here, hour one. Our thanks to Jon Schaeffer for giving us a few minutes. A couple of tweets here I wanted to get to. Pro Football Talk reporting that it looks like it may come down to two guys for the Colts job, Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs and Jeff Saturday. Say the longer that Saturday hangs around, the greater the chance that Jim Irsay will hire him. That would be something else if that ends up coming to pass. And also the reports that the Vikings have interviewed the Seahawks defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, interviewed with Minnesota. So obviously the Vikes are looking for a new DC, and they have talked to the Seahawks defensive coordinator, so something to keep an eye on there. Also, today is the start of the Farmers Insurance Open, which goes on at Torrey Pines, which, if you're asking me, wait a minute, it's Wednesday. Normally golf goes Thursday to Sunday. They did this last year because CBS has the TV rights to it, and obviously they have the conference championship games this weekend. So it's a neat story, actually, where TV dictated, as they do, that, all right, well, the Farmers Insurance Open, which is Torrey Pines is one of the highlights of the entire year, that they had two choices. Either they move Wednesday to Sunday and stay, or Wednesday to Saturday and stay on CBS, or go to NBC. And initially they thought about going to NBC, but they said, let's try it. And what it allows, and you'll see for you golf nuts out there, that you have primetime golf on Friday and Saturday, which the golfers like because it's a later start, and easier travel on Sunday for everybody involved, fans and the golfers themselves. I found this last year that I watched a bit of the final round. I didn't have any rooting interest in it, but it was a neat deal because it was on Saturday and it was on a non-traditional time, especially like this weekend when the temperatures are going to be -20 outside. It's all right to be watching golf in San Diego on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. And they're going to do that again this year. The interesting part about this, and this is just for the TV nut that I am, that they had Jim Nantz in Kansas City last year calling the final round off the monitor because he was set to do the AFC Championship the next day. I don't know if he's doing that again because CBS has the later game. If they wanted to have him fly from, and CBS would do this, have him do the final round in San Diego, then fly him after that to Kansas City to call the AFC title game, which is a 5:30 Central Time start on Sunday. Must be tough doing that, but wouldn't be unheard of if they were actually go down that road. So I just thought that's an interesting deal. And for you sports TV viewers out there that are searching for stuff this weekend, Torrey Pines always gives us some great golf. It's pretty much the first hard golf course of the year. It's complete opposite of what we saw this past weekend, where John Rahm won it. What was it, Eric? 27 under par, I think, was the winning score that ended up winning at the American Express. This actually is as people know, a tough golf course. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. So just wanted to throw that out there. Reminder, we got Dave St. Peter coming up 10:35, Twins president, on the Caravan being back in town and Target Field getting another football game. We come back, David Richman will join us, Bison men's basketball head coach. It's a frustrating weekend for the NDSU men. How do they bounce back with UND coming in on Friday night? We'll ask him that and a bunch more when we start hour 2, right after this.
This is Hot Mike. Hot Mike. On the networks of WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hot Mike rolls on our second hour on this Wednesday morning. We mentioned Twins president Dave St. Peter coming up at 10:35. Lots to chat about there. The Winter Caravan is back in Fargo tonight. Sure, there'll be plenty of questions what the Twins have done, trading away the American League batting champion for pitching. They added some outfield help last Monday, so we'll get into that coming up with Dave at 10:35. But it's 10 o'clock. We got another Dave we talk to each and every Wednesday, the head men's basketball coach at North Dakota State. Mr. David Richman is good enough, of course, to join us each and every Wednesday back in his palatial offices here. I thought we were going all over the place. Last week was locker room. I mean, you got some other locales built in for us, right?
Well, I know, but then you didn't give me any kind of feedback last week about it. Like, it was like, oh, there you are in locker room. I'm like, all right, I got that hint, So I did get some feedback about the office. I'm looking for kind of any kind of positive feedback with everything right now. So back in the office, I'm not very intelligent. I don't know what palatial or whatever that word was.
Yeah, it's like a palace, man. It's a nice office. I've only been in there a couple times. It's very nice.
Palace.
Yeah. Palace. I understand why you work like 23 hours a day, because that's a nice office you got there.
Oh, so. I sound like my wife now. She thinks I work 23 hours a day too. I don't have a Superman in my office yet. That's the next piece of
and you know what? I don't have a sombrero, so there you go. We're even on that.
Even up. Yeah.
So when you have what happened last weekend, for you, do you have to get away on Sunday, not think about hoops? I know you got your lovely family you get home to, but how often do you want to get right back to work?
Yeah, I think that's the easy thing, Dom. You figure out like, hey, like, man, just dive in and figure out what happened. But sometimes you need to take a minute to figure out what happened. And I've said it to a bunch of people. It's like being at Oxbow Golf Course, right? And you play 3, 4, 5, and you go par, birdie, par, and you're like, hey, I got this game figured out. I got this golf thing, I know what I'm doing now. And then 7, 8, 9, you go double, and you build a snowman, and you don't have the game figured out. And I think I know it's crazy, but that's why I sit here a little bit with a smirk and a smile, Dom. I mean, it's exactly why I chose to do what I'm doing. My father was a college football coach. I saw the time that he was gone. I saw the dedication that he put into it, some of the sacrifices to our family at times, and I didn't want to be in coaching. And then I got into some things where it wasn't a comfortable environment for me to be behind a desk and to sit behind a computer screen all the time. And so I enjoy these challenges, and that's exactly what we got. We got a young group. We got with that becomes some immaturities of understanding some things, not immaturities as far as bad kids. These are great guys. Spoken to that. I'm not going to just,
backpedal from that. We've got great character, great talent. We just got to make sure we understand and execute the responsibilities in each moment. And we weren't able to do that for 80 minutes this weekend.
How do you address, or how did you address the guys after the game on Saturday?
This is the same way. Like I was pretty adamant with some things. So what we've got right now, Dom, is just inconsistencies, and it's inconsistencies from game to game. It's inconsistencies from different personnel. And we've got to be able to organize that. You go back to a month or 6 weeks ago, it was this guy, and then you go here and it was that guy, and then something else. Again, it's part of a maturation process. I look at, you and I spoke to it off air. Oral Roberts is a really talented team, and they were geeked up to play us, and they played like that.
Yeah.
You look at the maturity based on their experiences. When we cut it to 7, they didn't rattle, and then they go the next 3 possessions and they go bang, 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 and now it's a 15-point game and it's a wrap. I look at the Kansas City game where they came in here hungry and desperate. They got beat at North Dakota. They wanted to go the weekend split. They have some very big, physical, experienced guards, that took advantage of us in the first half. And you and I talked about it again. We're getting ourselves into some foul trouble that has some key guys sitting on the bench for key stretches. We've got to do a better job of 2 things: staying out of foul trouble. We got to do a better job as a staff. We're going to make some decisions. Maybe we play some guys in the first half a little longer. All those things are bouncing around. That's why I love the challenges and of this profession.
How did you get a sense of the guys bouncing back at practice the last couple of days? I know it's a roller coaster. You're dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds, mostly on the 18 side of things. So what is that roller coaster like when you come back to practice on Monday?
Yeah, again, full transparency, I was disappointed in who we were on Monday. I think we had some lingering effects of that. I think we had some effects, some young guys wondering, like, man, what's coach going to be like today? We're going to be doing this and that instead of just being right in the moment and getting better. Very pleased with our practice yesterday. Tweaked some things about how we handle our practice. Probably went on a little bit of a slower pace, something that's not very comfortable for me, with my ADD, ADHD, like, let's go. But probably more so than anything, a credit to our staff, our assistants, for organizing some things that way to walk some guys through some situations, to give them some more of an opportunity to ask questions. And I think it was different, but could be very beneficial for us as we move forward.
I know you don't worry about the schedule, but would you rather be playing twice this week instead of once to get a couple games out there? Or is it, we need some time before we get back out on the floor?
Again, you're right, Dom. I just been asked this question in a myriad of different ways about who I am, where I'm going, who this team is, where we're going. Like, to me, it's here's what it is. Here's what we have today in front of us. Let's get better. If we do those things, everything else will take care of itself. And that's where we're at. Today it's an off day. Today I feel like it's a Dom Izzo day. Like, I'm going to show up 1 minute before I got to do something. And then I'm going to do that. And then afterwards I'm going to go home and take a long nap, go out to eat, all those things.
My crew is laughing, by the way, because that's pretty accurate on some days that I get here like 8:59 and we go on the air. So, I appreciate that. You look at, I watch Andrew Morgan's game, and I know what you and I talked about when you signed him. Like, we can develop him to be a force down low. Describe what you saw Saturday, where he pretty much got whatever he wanted down low.
Yeah, again, and I mentioned this, Dom, and here's me, Dave Richman, being transparent with everything. I mentioned it in the locker room either Monday or in between games on Friday. Like, you go back to before Christmas, Morgan and I were battling some things, right? Trying to make sure that we were on the same page with some things. And Andrew's a bully. Andrew's a guy that's pretty secure in who he is, and sometimes doesn't want to take that leadership, doesn't want to utilize those things. And we've become on a great page lately of we're just trying to help each other. And him playing like this is a dude now. Right. I remember after our first exhibition game last year, Mike McFeely coming over and saying, wow, what's this? And I said, yeah, this is why we're really excited. Now it's about, just having him, now that now that him and I have that understanding of, hey, I'm trying to help you, you're trying to help us, that consistent, like trying to get it more, again, or Roberts game. I thought it was huge that he got in some foul trouble.
Yeah.
That, that hurt us. And
Yep.
then, he only played 14 minutes. The game got out of hand and I didn't want to use him. And so he could be like he was against Kansas City. Like we have some very talented young guards, but like we got a dominating presence in my mind in our 4 and 5, and Grant gets so much attention, but Morgs deserves equally just as much. And he was terrific Saturday, kept us around. That's the version of us that I see. It's like Grant playing, like he did first half against Oral Roberts. It's Morgs playing like this. It's Bowden being that grit and making shots. It's Damari taking care of the ball. It's Jakari being that defender and making some shots. It's, all those things kind of coming together. And, if and when it does, watch out, right? If not, we're going to keep on this roller coaster a little bit, Dom.
When you have a first half go, and I know you talked about this post game, when the ball's going in the hoop the way it is it sounds so stupid to ask, a catch-22, like, boy, we're making shots and it's quote unquote easy, but does that change the mentality of a guy or a team when things are going in that, I don't know if try as hard is the right word, but it's coming a lot easier than we expected it to?
It's not a stupid question at all. And I say that like it's exactly how we felt as a staff on the bench. Like it's twofold. Making shots is like a security blanket that's not really there. It's really hard to make shots through the course of 30 plus games.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make shots for the course of even just through one game. And I think it's a false sense of security. I know when you're playing a team like Oral Roberts, it's compounded. Like, listen, I know Coach Mills and those guys, they're trying to get stops, but they want tempo, and it played into their tempo, and they are more accustomed to playing different styles. In particular, they're more accustomed to wanting that style of game than we are, especially right now. And you saw it play out exactly how I felt it was going to play out. And I also think too, we mentioned it, some of our upperclassmen mentioned it, too much of who we are offensively is affecting who we are defensively. Twofold, meaning like if we're not making shots, it kind of gives us a bad attitude, like, right, to not sit down and guard defensively. When we're making shots, it's like, we're security blanket. Well, we'll get it back. Like, no matter what's happening on one end of the floor, it's about being in the moment on the other end of the floor. And again, pretty systematic, whatever you want to call it, this whole deal, our successes, and there has been a lot, and I told these guys this, there has been a lot of successes based on defending, rebounding, taking care of the ball. And I know that's not the flashy, sexy, hey, like sell the press conference, like sell the recruits. But why change? Because it's worked for us. And tell me anybody that's playing deep into March that's not doing it that way.
Exactly.
That's my thing. Like, you have to be able to execute in the half court offensively. You have to be able to finish possession. You have to be able to guard. You have to take care of the ball. And so, again, people speak to us getting better along the way. People speak to our successes in March. This is why. Like, these are the things that are important in March. So why wouldn't we focus on those throughout the entirety of the season?
We talked about this last week about having a great environment. I thought you had that certainly on Thursday. I thought actually the crowd was really good on Saturday as well. To build off of that with a rivalry game coming up on Friday night, when that play, what was it, 3,300 when they were there Thursday night? That was a great environment. I hope that's the case we get again on Friday night.
Hey, thank you so much for bringing that up, Dom. And you're right. I thought in particular Thursday our students were great.
Awesome.
They showed. Not only did they show up, they showed out. Right. They were loud.
Yep.
They were vocal. And gosh darn it, like that's where I appreciate you, Mike. Mike did an article too to kind of generate some things. Like I firmly believe that's where this show that's where social media, that's where print media. Like that's where we can all be partners and work together and to do these things. Like I coach basketball for a lot of reasons, and one of them is the spirit and atmosphere that is college athletics. Like I watch pro, I do professional, but not nearly to the extent or with the same passion as what college. The fans right on top of you, the engagement, like hey, I just went to class with that kid, the other day, or I just ate lunch with, with Lance Waddles the other day. I know these guys, right? There's that. And man, it was awesome. It was really awesome. And that's what's a little disappointing. Like you feel like you got these guys right there and you want to grab them to come back. But, hopefully with it being an in-state rivalry game on Friday and some things, like we can continue to build off that, because I did think throughout those 80 minutes it was good.
Okay, here's a question. I know you're going to roll your eyes at me, but when you look at that South Dakota State team last year that didn't lose a game, and then what you've seen from Oral Roberts so far, are they comparable? Are they on that same kind of level or not? Not yet.
Boy, this is where I'm not ready to go into media, right? Because it's poor for Monday morning quarterback chair when we're supposed to debate these things. Like, those are two really good teams.
Yes, yes,
two really good teams. Two teams that are beat very differently. I'm gonna tell you this. I'm excited. We're excited to play Oral Roberts again. Like, I hope our locker room understands that, because, and I think that's part of what happened this weekend too, is like, you come to NDSU and you're going to get everybody's best shot, because of who we are, what's happened before. And again, I also think you want those challenges of Max Asmus, right? You want those challenges like Connor Vanover, who's, just a highly skilled 7'5" young man. Like, he changes some things defensively too. You saw that in the second half. Like, but now I feel like, all right, it's challenged us as a staff to go back and figure out, like, okay, this happened, but like, I'll tell you this, going into that game in Tulsa, in a few weeks, losing's not an option going in. Might we lose coming out? We might. Well, like, as a staff, we need to be different. And that's where I love, like, the opportunities to get challenged, to think outside the box, to figure out new creative ways. So that's for you guys to decide, like, who's, this and that. But I know this is two very talented teams that, we look forward to the challenges of.
I know. Talking about defensively, you held UND to 49 when you played up there right before New Year's in December. They've played a little bit better basketball since then. Trayson Eaglestaff is going to jump out for fans that watch the game and that watched our high school coverage. Mr. Basketball from Bismarck, I know you watched him through the recruiting process. How have you seen his game change or elevate going from high school now to the Division I level?
Hey, here's what I'll talk about. I'll talk about UND as a whole. Just there, you can see, like, what I appreciate about Coach Sather is there is a brand of basketball, right? That and they continue to get better. Their rotations seem more consistent. Their minutes of those guys seem more consistent, and they're a team that, record wise, see it like, hey, maybe struggling a little bit, but you can see progress in the fact that they beat Kansas City, the fact that they hung around for a good portion with Oral Roberts, and they had a lead at Western. So this is a UND team that is different than we saw in late December, and has our full attention. Here come Friday night.
So I'm watching the end of Iowa State, Kansas State last night, and just we talk about how tough the Summit League is, and it is. Big 12, man, which you saw up close with Kansas. I mean, holy, that is a tough grind when you got 6 teams like that. Just you beat your brains out, then you still got to get to the conference tournament, and then hopefully the NCAA tournament. Man, that's just.
I know there's. I was on the road. Coach Jones and I were on the road last night doing a little recruiting, and we were tracking that score. And you're right too. Like, there's like the Big Ten gets so much attention and narrative during the regular season, and then it seems like they fade during the NCAA tournament. And there's some of that where you want to get challenged, but you like just beat yourself up a little bit too. And man, there's just good basketball, man. Coach Self and Jones and I were talking about this 1 minute. Lenardi and Dom Izzo's of the world are talking about Kansas being a 1 seed, and then they lose 3 in a row, and one of them is a 20-point blowout at home to TCU. So like, again, man, like if you got an answer for us, like, hey, we're looking for it, but it makes our jobs interesting, challenging, but very, very rewarding at the same sense.
So did you say you have the day off today? Is that right? So what are you doing after this?
Have the day off. Our players have the day off.
So what is a day like that if the players are off? What are you doing after this?
What am I going to do? So we had a staff meeting this morning.
Okay.
I'm actually going to run to Wapaton this afternoon and have a lunch with a dear friend, a lady that I haven't seen for a minute
Nice.
to your point, to kind of create some mental space for myself
Good for you.
much as it's to see her and hug her and come back. And we have some other things that are a little bit not necessarily right here in the moment. But some other things this evening that are going to help move basketball and individuals within our program forward. So there's always, I remember this, Dom, like I'm an assistant at WAP Science and I'm going to come be a graduate assistant for Miles. And I got the job in April and he says, yeah, just get up here. And I'm like, what do you do in college basketball in May? You don't do anything. And it's like, bam, that smacked me in the face. Like, this is a 24/7, 365.
And look how much it's changed now. I mean, literally.
I know.
I mean, you thought it was busy then. It's just crazy now.
And I've also said this too, like, give me October to hopefully mid-March. I feel like I have some things in my control. After that, it's like, I don't know what's happening here.
That sounds about right pretty much for my job every day. It's like, I have no idea what's going on.
It's kind of like home for us, right?
Exactly
like,
right.
Our wives tell us what to do and our kids tell us where we're going, right?
Great to see you, man. Thanks always for the time. Look forward to seeing you on Friday night, okay?
Appreciate you, sir. Thanks, Dom.
David Richman, North Dakota State men's basketball coach, joins us each and every Wednesday at 10. Bison men and UND coming up on Friday night. You'll see it live on WDAY, 7 o'clock, ABC statewide for the match between the Bison and the Fighting Hawks, who lost on Monday to Western. They only got 49 against NDSU the first time they played. It'll be a heck of a game. Good matchup coming up on Friday. We're overdue for a break. We'll take one now. We'll get caught up on a couple things as we roll on our Wednesday morning edition of Hot Mic. We're back right after this. Back here on The Big Show. Thanks to David Richman for giving us a few minutes. Hockey Day Minnesota is coming up this weekend down in White Bear Lake. I was just looking at the matchups because next year Hockey Day will be in Warroad, which will be a big deal there. They haven't been up north, gosh, since they came to Moorhead, and that was 10 years ago now. 11 years ago. 2012 they were here. 2011? It's been a while since they've been up at this part of the world. Stillwater and the White Bear Lake girls will start. That game is at 9:30 a.m. Hermantown and Matamidi follow that at 1, and then Hill Murray and White Bear Lake at 4:30. The Wild will play that night against the Sabres. All those games on Bally Sports North. It's a great television deal. It really is, and there's been some amazing shots. When they came up here for Hockey Day, granted, they created a rink that's behind now the current Cullen Ice Center over there in Moorhead. And they actually had it. I think they moved it up in the schedule now because it used to be in mid-February. And it actually, that day, it was too sunny. It was too warm because the ice kept melting out there. It was a great scene. Hill Murray was in it that year. Hill Murray played the Spuds in the game. I think it was Wyzetta and Roseau played the other game. It was quite the deal. And it's a really neat TV experience. The Spuds played down in St. Cloud a few years ago. Actually, I think it was like 5-6 years ago now when they played. That was the year Moorhead made it to the state championship game at the X, and they had played on TV already for that game in Hockey Day. So it's a neat deal. I tweeted out last night about the Joe Mauer deal. Apparently, that has gotten more feedback than I thought about if Mauer would be a first ballot Hall of Famer next year. I got all sorts of responses on the about this. That, well, it's not a slam dunk to, well, you look back and look at his career, maybe gets in. There's a lot of really great players still trying to get in, don't know because of fickle voters. That's always a good point there. Yeah, it's a different feedback on this. I'm really interested to see if his case, his candidacy is point blank in the fact that the MVP and the 3 batting titles, which no catcher's ever done, that speaks for itself. So I'm not debating or asking about Hall of Fame worthiness. What I am asking is first ballot has a different connotation to it. There were no first ballot Hall of Famers this year. Like I think David Ortiz got in first ballot deal. There's a different level to you as a baseball player, and it's baseball only because that's the only Hall of Fame that has this kind of reverential treatment towards it if you're a first ballot guy. And knowing next year, as we talked about, kind of the backlog of guys, you look at a Carlos Beltran who got some steam that moved up on the voting this year. There could be some other guys that, and Adrian Beltre, is probably going to be a first ballot guy. I'd be really interested to see how that's going to plan out for next year. Here's our buddy Seth Stows, who tweets this out. In your opinion, will you get into the Hall of Fame? Yes, first ballot on 30%. Yes, but not the first ballot at 57%. I tend to agree with probably that. I would be surprised, honestly, if he got in. I'm just throwing the question. I think there's some merit to it. So I was just visiting with our good friend Brad Anderson about. I think there's some merit to it, but there's like one of the tweets I got. The voters on that always determine on the legitimacy of one guy or not if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. We're due for a break. We'll take one now. We come back. Twins president Dave St. Peter will join the program as the Twins Winter Caravan returns to Fargo tonight. And there's football heading back to Target Field this fall. We'll discuss that when Hot Mike returns on WDAY Extra at InForum.com. Well, if that shot outside doesn't scream baseball weather, nothing does. We're looking outside, a gray, overcast, middle of January day, but honestly, the temperature is not too bad, especially when I tell you that the Twins Winter Caravan is back in Fargo tonight. Normally, we've had like -20 when the Twins roll into town, but for the first time in 3 years, the Winter Caravan is back rolling through the upper Midwest. It's one of the really neat things in professional sports. So few teams still do this, and after a 3-year absence, it's back, and it's back in Fargo tonight. The likes of Nick Gordon and Jose Miranda will be here, along with Chris Atterbury and Dan Gladden and Tommy Watkins from the Twins. And anytime we get to chat with our next guest, I'm super pumped to do that. Back on our show after first time in a few years, we welcome back the president of the Minnesota Twins. Dave St. Peter is good enough to give us a few minutes from his office at Target Field on this Wednesday. I'm sad you're not here, but I understand you guys got some work to do to get ready for 2023.
Well, I appreciate it, Dom. It's good to be with you. Yeah, I wish I was there. I always appreciate the opportunity to be in Fargo, be back in North Dakota, and obviously I love our caravan. I appreciate your shout out there. We think we do it better than anybody, and we think it's important. It's a connection point with our players, with our broadcasters, with our staff, with a lot of great fans throughout the region, and some of which don't get a chance to travel to the Twin Cities as often as maybe as they'd like. And we don't do it quite as extensively as we used to, but we're still going to keep doing it as long as I'm here, at least. And I'm really also thankful to our players. Jose Miranda is in the middle of a huge offseason for him. He's going to have the third base job, and this is a huge guy for our future of our franchise, and he's taken the time to come up here and engage with fans. And then Nick Gordon also has become a really critical player for us, a super utility guy. That's a great program tonight in Fargo.
Tell me about getting this back going, Dave. Obviously, with COVID sidelining it for the last couple of years, was there any hesitancy about bringing it back, or was it a no-brainer to do this again?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard for us to do it when we had COVID protocols, to be honest with you, Dom. And obviously, those protocols governed, Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association. A year ago, we were in the middle of a lockout,
right?
So it wasn't necessarily even COVID. So it's a breath of fresh air to be able to go out and resume some of these types of events and initiatives. And I know our players enjoy it. I know our fans missed it. And, frankly, it was important that we come back. But, it feels good to be able to have a more normal flow to the off season. Winter Caravan, we have a huge event called the Diamond Awards in the Twin Cities Thursday night. That's kind of an awards program for on the baseball side, and then of course Twins Fest this weekend at here at the Fillmore and Target Field.
And then Twins Fest obviously being back as well. I mean, that if that's not the official kickoff for 2023, I don't know what is.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's crazy to think, we're going to be reporting to spring training, I think Feb 15, and first full squad workout on Feb 20. So I know as somebody like you who lives in the in the tundra, those are special days when you see those sights from Fort Myers and hear about it on the radio, because it tells us all that spring is near. And we're not that far away from that. And Twins Fest is another good sign of that this weekend.
I know it's been an active last week here, certainly with the trading of Luis Arraez to the Miami Marlins for Pablo Lopez. Those are business decisions, but that you also have to explain to your fans. How difficult has that been over the last few days?
Yeah, it's a baseball decision. It's all rooted in, how do we put ourselves in the best possible position, not just to win the American League Central, but hopefully win playoff games, which is something we haven't done in a long time, and win playoff series. Really challenging. Luis Arraez, one of the more popular players in our clubhouse amongst our fan base. Incredibly proud of Louis. He overcame a lot of adversity as a young player. Significant injury, and ultimately would go on to become a really accomplished big league hitter and wonderful personality. But in this world, when you look at the makeup of our roster and you think about again, how do we best position ourselves for success? I think the decision was made that another starting pitcher would be critical to that. And then in addition to that, we were able to secure two really good young players coming back from the Marlins, which I know fans, they don't want to hear about prospects, but at the end of the day, those guys might end up being the best players involved in this trade. You just don't know. So we thought it was the right decision, but we also recognize and share the angst about losing Luis Arraez. So, but I like our club, Dom. I think we're in a really good spot. I think the addition of Michael A. Taylor gives us additional depth, and I think one of the things that we're gonna see in 2023 is hopefully more depth out of our starting pitching. Hopefully going deeper into games. And then I think the defense that we're going to play behind that starting pitching is going to be a big part of it when you think about the construct of this club. And it all starts with Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton, hopefully being on the diamond for a lot more than maybe what we've seen in the past.
I know you've been in the game all your life. I've loved the game since I was a youngster. To see the 2023 is going to bring around some radical changes for it. As a baseball lifer, how do you feel about where the game is going right now?
Well, I'm excited about it. I know it's, I like you, I love baseball. Frankly, when you look at the other sports, they change rules all the time and nobody says a thing. But in baseball, you try to change a rule and it's like you got to go to the Supreme Court. The game is held to a different standard, which is something I appreciate about it. However, I think it's held the game back. I think Commissioner Manfred deserves credit. The Players Association deserves credit for allowing us to advance these. Frankly, Dom, I think there's a bunch more rule changes coming in the future, including automated balls and strikes. I think you're going to see some changes going forward around realignment and some other things that I think our game is in desperate need of. But in the short term, I'm excited about the pitch clock. I think it's going to be great for fans. In the minor leagues, we saw about 25 minutes shaved off of average time of game. If we can get 20 minutes, I'll be ecstatic at the big league level. I think the shift regulation is going to be really interesting to see that. I think the thing I'm most excited about, and I think you'll see it here at Target Field, is Carlos Correa going deep into the hole to field a ground ball, something you just don't see as much often with the shift because the guys don't have to move as far. And then even the changes on the bases and then the change on the number of pickoff attempts is going to increase strategy late in games. And those are good things for our game, not bad things.
It's amazing to me, Dave, that the Target Field now is going to start, year 14 coming up this year.
14.
And I know you did some TLC on the stadium, which seems crazy to me because I love it going down there. But for fans that are going to make their way down, what do you imagine the scoreboard obviously is going to get everybody's attention. What stands out to you?
Well, I mean, I think the video board project that we're in the middle of right now is a big deal. It's a $30 million project, biggest one we've done in the history of Target Field. And not only are the boards going to be spectacular, but they're going to be much bigger. We've added them in some new locations that are all aimed at kind of adding game experience and connecting people to the game, even if they don't have a great sight line to the game. As you know, the Target Field experience is tends to be a social experience. A lot of fans come here, and watching every pitch is not their first priority. It's more connecting with people, visiting some of the bars and restaurants. So I'm excited about that. We've got a couple surprises. We're going to announce a couple things later this week around some branding and some additional, I would describe it as kind of signature aspects of that project that I think are going to be fun. And I think all added kind of when you see an image, you know immediately that you're at Target Field, you're in downtown Minneapolis, and it's the home of the Minnesota Twins. That's kind of the goal here with some of the little touches, so to speak, that are going to be part of that project.
You know, the other thing I wanted to go back to was with the schedule change as well. I know for the first time this, my son is going to be 4. We're going to make our way down to Target Field so he can see his first baseball game. His mom, my wife, is a diehard Cubs fan, and the Cubs are coming now because everybody's playing everybody. How do you think? Will that help attendance? Do you think now with teams coming in?
Well, I sure think it should, Dom. It's certainly a great thing for fans. We're going to play all 29 teams,
right,
all 29 other teams in 2023 going forward. Obviously, we'll see every team in the National League will come to Target Field every other year. So, you know, you're going to get 7 National League opponents plus I think the Brewers this year, and I'm excited about that. I think we've got the Cubs, we've got the Mets, we've got the Padres, and the following year you'll have the ones we don't have this year, and it's great even for fans who want to travel.
Yeah,
I think they get to go to different parks around the league. What you are going to get is you're going to get less games against the Royals, less games against the Guardians, less games against the Tigers, less games against the White Sox, and I could argue that's not good for us competitively. Because we've won a lot of games over the years by dominating the Central. Yeah. But it is the right thing to do for fans, and I think that's why it's such a popular move for the league.
I'm interested to see how that plays out with everybody in 2023. The last time you were on, we were talking about I was joking with you about trying to get a basketball game at Target Field because you knew you had hockey coming in, but you got another football game that was announced yesterday with South Dakota State and Drake set to play in September. Tell us about the origins of this and how long this has come to fruition.
Well, you know, we've played football here. Obviously, thrilled to have hosted the Bison here a few years back in 2019. And then we also were fortunate enough to host the St. John, St. Thomas game. And both of those games hugely successful. COVID set us back a bit. You know, we've had dialogue. We always talked about, you know, the games we're really on the hunt for are what we would consider to be strong regional type matchups. And, you know, it's never been lost on us that South Dakota State has a rich fan base here in the Twin Cities, a big number of alums. We do these college theme nights every year, Dom, as we do with NDSU and UND and a bunch of other schools. Outside of the University of Minnesota, South Dakota State is by far the most successful, by far. Nothing even close. We think there's going to be a huge success. Whether they're going to sell 34,000 plus tickets and eclipse the Bison number, I suppose that's the magical question, right? But as just the guy who hosts the game, I'm kind of interested to find out, right? So I didn't when we started talking to South Dakota State prior to their run this year, and they certainly knew we had interest. But we're also in discussions with some other schools about future games here, including NDSU. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But we're excited about having South Dakota State and Drake here and think it'll be a great showcase for FCS football.
What was the feedback, Dave, you got from North Dakota State about going down there, visiting with fans? They loved it. The Bison are going to be at U.S. Bank Stadium 2 weeks before your game at Target Field.
Well, the feedback we got from NDSU was great. You know, again, you'll have to ask them, but what they told us is they had their staff, their players had a great experience. If I remember right, I don't think anybody ever tackled Trey Lance in that game.
No.
But it was good. And I think we think football works here. You know, it's never going to be our primary thing. We recognize there's playability concerns coming out for baseball. You know, our groundskeeper is a huge part of these decisions. But we also think that there's a place for it, and we're sensitive to our relationship with the University of Minnesota, and but frankly, with St. Thomas now as a Division I school here, there's some other ideas being kicked around, and I'm excited about the ability to add future games to the schedule here going forward.
I think I asked you this last time. Is there a potential where you play a game not in the Twins window, but like in November or December? Is that a possibility?
Yeah. That actually would be preferred by the Twins. We haven't been able to find those games, but we are in conversations about at least one of those options, and we'd love to find a way to make that more of the tradition, is to always play in November. But again, that requires some help from the schedule makers, so to speak, and whether or not we can find that or not over time is the question.
You mentioned about the success of South Dakota State fans that have come down for their individual night. That surprised you to have that kind of turnout?
Yeah, it surprised me when the first year we did it, but ever since then, what I've seen is just the passion from that fan base. It's good. I'm not here to rate fan bases, but and I think they're really also a really strong alumni base here in the Twin Cities, and it's exciting. Look, I'm an old NCC guy. And where my allegiance is to the school up north in Grand Forks, but I have tremendous respect for what's been built in both Fargo and in Brookings around their football program and really the entirety of the athletic programs. It's been impressive, and I'm counting on my North Dakota Fighting Hawks to be in that mix in the future.
Well, that was my last question. Are you getting some heat there from Grand Forks? Like, hey, wait a minute now, SDSU and NDSU are playing.
I can assure you, I've had conversations with my friends in Grand Forks about playing here, so I'm not giving up on that. I'd really like them to play hockey here, but that's a different story for a different day.
No, that would be a neat environment. What are you most excited about just for 2023? Getting the baseball season started. What really gets you, like, we're not that far away from spring training. What are you really excited about for this upcoming year?
Oh, I think it's our team. I mean, I know the off season started maybe with a whimper, but boy, the second half of the off season we've been very aggressive. I think our team looks to be very sound. I think I think our division race is going to be fabulous. Cleveland's really good. I think the White Sox will be better, and I think we're going to be right with them. And I'm optimistic we're going to be there at the end. And I'm excited to see our community and our region come together around Twins baseball. I know there's still angst about coming to games in downtown, and I hear it all the time from people in North Dakota. But I tell people every day, I come here every day. I do it safely, and we've put 4 million people in this ballpark the last 2 years, and have had 4 incidents. So the reality of it is the narrative isn't consistent with the reality about coming to ball games. And I would encourage anybody in the Fargo-Moorhead area throughout the Red River Valley, get a ticket, come back to a ball game. I think you're going to enjoy seeing Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton in the same lineup on the same day. And we can't wait to get to spring training in a couple weeks.
Well said, my friend. Thanks so much for doing this. It's great to see you, and I can't wait to see you at the ballpark here this summer, okay?
All right, let us know how we can help. Good to see you.
Thanks, Dave. Dave St. Peter, president of the Minnesota Twins, joining us here as we wrap up our show, and the details, of course, on the Jacks and Drake football game that's coming in September. We'll wrap the show. We'll take a break, come back, and put a bow on everything. We'll do that right after this on Hot Mic. Well, it was a fun show, packed today. And put by quick, too. It's already time for us to say so long. Our thanks to Dave St. Peter for coming on. That was good stuff. We'll podcast that separately as well. We'll have more on the South Dakota State Target Field Date coming up. You can check that out, InForum.com, later today on that. Also, if you missed our interview with Cordell Volson from the Cincinnati Bengals, you can check that out as well at InForum.com. Good stuff there with the former Bison standout as he gets set for the AFC Championship game, which is coming up on Sunday night. Bengals-Chiefs. Winner goes to the Super Bowl, which is played in Arizona this year. Let's do what to watch before we get out of here. It's already that time. Mentioned, obviously, Twins Winter Caravan is going on tonight. We'll be out there. I believe Cullen Holt will be live with at the event tonight for our newscast at 6 o'clock, so you can check that out. We'll have much more on the news coming up tonight at 10. Minnesota Timberwolves are back on the floor tonight. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing after their debacle they had on Monday against Houston, now against a good team in Zion and the Pelicans. 7 o'clock tonight on Bally Sports North. The Golden Gophers are back home. Minnesota will take on Indiana tonight. 8 o'clock on Big Ten Network. Gophers are without Dawson Garcia, probably looks like out with an injury. Minnesota with 1 league win so far this season. Hoosiers are 13-6. That's at 8 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. And the U.S. men's national team will play its first game since the World Cup. They play a friendly tonight in L.A. against Serbia. They're all right. I know they didn't make the World Cup, but they're all right. That's a 9 o'clock start on HBO Max. And again, I'd like to see what their soccer coverage is like because they're going to be the home for U.S. soccer going forward. We got to roll. Thanks to our guests today, to Drew Trafton, Jon Schaeffer, Dave Richman, and Dave St. Peter. If you missed any of our show, you can podcast it later today at InForum.com. Everybody have a great Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Hot Mic on WDAY Extra at InForum.com.